Okay, so now that we have connected to data, we've added the instruments, we can now start creating some charts. I'll show you some things with the properties that you may not have remembered or may not have ever known. But here, obviously, we have the chart template as it reads right here. And you see that I have quite a few chart templates here. Probably not as many as a lot of you, but I may have a default set with some other indicators that I don't really necessarily want to show right now. So I'm going to set this to none, which is all the way up at the top here. And let's just go through some of these settings here because you have access to so many different types of charts, most of which are simply useless. Well, I guess they all have different uses, but as far as being useful, well, you have tick, volume, range, second, minute, day, week, month, year, Kagi, Renko, point and figure, line break, and then the ones that come with Bloodhound. And these are the backtest, line break, which give you the proper opening price of a line break bar, the Pro Renko, and then the backtest Renko, which gives you the actual proper opening price for backtesting where your fills would be. All right, so I'm just simply going to open a basic minute chart and let's set it to 30 minutes because here we are going to be drawing a line for the split of every session. The split of every session is the ETH close. What does ETH stand for? In this session template that we just edited, or I was showing you how you could edit in the previous video on Instrument Manager and editing instruments, that ETH stands for the electronic trading hours or the extended trading hours, and that is typically going to be 5 o'clock Central for a lot of your CME products. So that's the close, the ETH close. So a line is going to be plotted there, a vertical line will be plotted there when this is set to true. So let me just go ahead and load a chart here. This is for plotting executions for your buy and your sell orders. By default, it's set to text and marker, but I'm going to set it to do not plot, just so it's a nice clean blank chart. These are the colors for the bars, the colors for the outlines of the wick, since I'm using candlesticks. Obviously, you have 5 different options here for the chart style, okay? And you can actually import different styles for point and figure, a few different things, high-low close bars, and you can get those files from a forum called futures.io or the NinjaTrader forum. But let's go ahead and load this. I have 10 days being loaded right now. That seems to be a common problem for a lot of people, is how many days they've loaded onto a chart. A lot of times you'll get an error for the relative volume or the relative density pertaining to not enough bars being loaded onto the chart. So in order to combat that error, simply start loading more days onto the chart. If it's a 5-minute chart, I tend to have about 27 to 35 days on the chart, and that's plenty. And that will give you, at least 5 or 6, maybe 10 days back where you have, relative volume on the chart. And here you see the session break each day, right? This one's a little bit different because we're going from the close on Friday into the open Sunday night through to the close Monday. Okay, so that's why this one's a little bit wider here. Sorry, this is the close. Yeah, that's the close on the 13th, and then the open the 15th, right? That's what it is. It's the holiday on Monday. Sorry about that. That's the reason this one is smaller. That's the holiday that we had. Anytime there's a holiday, a bank holiday, you'll most of the time you'll have trading up until noon on the exchange. So the exchange here is the NYMEX, but yeah, it's noon Chicago time, that's right. So even though this is trading on the NYMEX, they're all kind of linked together now, and Chicago is really the granddaddy of them all. So Chicago's the big one. So they close at noon Central Time, typically on holidays. All right. So anyway, if you want to get rid of that session break line, go back to data series. Anytime you want to alter anything on this chart here visually, you either go to data series or properties. Okay. So data series to get rid of that vertical line here, plot session break line. And then if you want to make the fonts larger for the X or Y axes, then you'll do that through the properties. Now, let me just see if there's anything important here. You could use days or bars or whatever, but typically when we're talking about the way that we're using the charts, we're more interested in a fixed number of days for the relative volume and the relative density indicators, all right, because they're looking back a fixed number of days, regardless of how many bars are on the chart or what value you're using for the minute charts. We're more interested in total number of days on that chart, okay? And of course here, again, to plot your executions, you can set those to just the marker or the text and marker. The text would tell you what price you actually entered that order as well. All right, so that's it. By default, it's going to be white with a grid pattern here. And to eliminate that, all I've done is right-click onto the chart, and you can access all of these things from the tool strip up top here as well, but I prefer to right-click on the chart and then select the Properties menu here. And you can change the color of the background there, which you could set to white, and then apply. And these are the horizontal and vertical grid lines, and I set those to false. But you could turn those back on if you wish, and there are your grid patterns there. I just really don't like that. I think it's actually quite nice. All I need to do now is just change the color of the font of the x-axis and the y-axis, and I can do that right here. See, axis. All right, now I want to show you something else here, because there are two different main types of charts. Anybody have any idea what those two types of charts would be? Has to do with the scaling over here on the right. One would be arithmetic, which is what we're using here, where the unit is spaced equally, equidistant spacing from one tick to the next. That's arithmetic. We're simply adding, all right? We're adding 1 penny here, 1 penny here, 1 penny here. Each penny from 1 penny to the next is the same distance. All right, the next one is correct, logarithmic. And what is logarithmic charts doing? They're adding logs, right? What are logs? They're basically percentage bases. So we're doing arithmetic for the smaller charts. And when it comes to market geometry, which is one of the main things that we're focused on, if you're looking at a monthly chart, let's do this. If the Dow Jones, let's do a monthly chart. When you're talking about really, really long charts, let's say 80, 90 years long, let's go as many days as we can. I'll set it to 50,000. When we're talking about looking at a really long period of time here, and we're wanting to do the market geometry on it, and we're using an arithmetic chart where each tick from one tick to the next has the same exact equidistant spacing, that doesn't account for these parabolic moves, or these really exponential moves. Different, but the same. Well, I should say the same, but different in terms of definition here. But if we want to see this laid out in percentage moves rather than tick to tick to tick, then we simply right-click on the edge of the chart right here. Okay, there's 3 ways to access this chart, and that's either through the data series, the properties, or the sidebar over here. You see that? So that sidebar has its own properties. And right now, let me show you this before we go into that. You see what I've done here? I've changed the scaling, right? And that's just clicking over here and dragging it up and down. If I want to move this entire thing vertically, I hold down the control key with my left hand, control, then click over here and drag up. See that? So I have to hold down the control key to do that. I know other platforms, they're easy. You can just grab it and move it all around like you want, but as a matter of fact, I'll show you before this little video is done, I'll show you how to get an indicator that will allow you to do that. But you see when I click on that F, so it then will automatically adjust. It'll do what it's calling here is auto scale right there. It will auto scale that chart. When there's no F, it's going to auto scale. And as I spread these bars apart, it's going to scale it, but to a certain percentage off of the low or off of the high, or I should say the bottom of the chart or the top of the chart. And if you want to adjust that, let's say this is not quite enough for you, you want it to be a little more compact, you right click, go to properties, and rather than 3% for the lower margin, let's set that to 10%, the width of the chart. If I set it to 10, you'll see this thing tighten up a little bit. So watch the top and the bottom here when I click apply. See? So if I set it to 100, well, let's not do that. Let's set it to 20 and 20. See? So that's something you may find useful if you have, for instance, that swing indicator, which is built into the Divergences Pro, and then you can't see the numbers up here above it because it's off screen. You could set that to maybe 8 or 9 or even 10, and then get the full view of what's above this swing high or below that swing low there. All right, so let's change it now from an arithmetic chart to a logarithmic chart. So we're going to change that here. We right click on that right margin and go to logarithmic. And now you'll see the scaling is in percentage moves. So what that means is each distance over here is going to be the same. Let's say I move, well, let me drag this into focus here. And you got to be careful with it because it starts to snap. Everything is in percentages. So once you start getting higher and higher up into here and you start moving, you're moving in terms of point per percent, which is kind of hard to put into words. But if you're moving it around up here, a slight movement will send this thing way off screen. So kind of drag it around from down here a little bit and just make really tiny movements. You have to hold down the control key to do this, but then you can kind of line it up here the way that you want it. And there we go. And now you can see it's tracing out a really nice channel, right? My channel for the toolbar isn't currently working with this logarithmic chart, but before I send out the next update, I'll make sure that it does, because this is really important for weekly and monthly charts. See, I'm not really connected to the low. It goes down a little bit further, and then there's a bull market before that, and then of course the crash that goes down to 1933. But once you line this up properly, this thing makes a really nice, beautiful channel, especially on the Dow. S&P 500 is not quite as old as the Dow. Anyway, so that's what we like to do with the monthly and the weekly charts, is to be able to set that into logarithmic or linear, which is arithmetic, okay?